much. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Understand. It's a working title.
Yeah.
Episode number 1. And today we have the great Penny Bradley. So
Nacht Waffen.
Pilot.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That was good. That was good, Jermaine. Nacht Waffen.
But that's what it's called. It's not called Darfleet. That's the code name you stole the what?
Exactly.
It's Nacht Waffen. Yes, you did it right.
Yeah.
And I'm really honored to be your first guest.
Right?
Yes. Well, thank you.
Now, with my friend Scott, he know a lot more about you than I do, so I had to go actually do a whole school on your whole history.
Oh no.
But I can learn like that, especially when I'm I can learn quickly. So
I know that.
I figured,
I've known both of you for a long time. How many years is it? 3, 4?
Yeah, but he said he knows your overall story, but your story is all encompassing.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of them.
So it's a truly deep dive if you only get well versed.
So you showed him the Patreon site, did you?
No. There's plenty of out there on YouTube for days. He basically found the old reality brief stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw one from 2016. So yeah, with James Rink.
Yeah,
that was
a bunch of them.
The one from 2016 was when I was first coming out public. It was the second interview I'd ever done.
Wow, I remember that.
And I came public because I was being shot at with directed energy weapons. And if they aim them at you long enough, they can stop your heart. But mostly they just hurt. So after I got hit the third time, I talked to my partner, Lou, and said, this isn't stopping. So how about we follow Bill Cooper's advice and hide in the spotlight, where if they do manage to kill me, it will verify my testimony. And he says, okay. So that's what we did. Found somebody willing to put me online.
I hear that. Now you have a unique part to your story more than others because you remember because somebody hit you with a CIA remember code?
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
In 2013, I spent a little over a week with a man who was an NSA agent. And to his credit, he had told me ahead of time he was an NSA agent. So he wasn't pulling any wool over my eyes. But he said he was a Russian translator. He didn't say he had access to anything else. He was the actual human being behind the NSA agent that did the hunt for Red October. You knew that was based on a real story, and he was the agent that had been involved in that.
I love that movie.
So yeah, I was like starstruck. I mean, this was a guy that had done important stuff, and I felt like pretty much a mouse. And so he says, well, you come back here and I'll give you a tour of DC. And, while I was there, he activated my memories from space. Every time we went by the Mormon temple, he would talk about how that in the story, The Wizard of Oz, that the Mormon temple looked like the Emerald City, and how that living in DC at the time, that the guys there thought it would be funny to put this banner over the walkover bridge saying, "Free Dorothy." And every time we drove past the thing, he would retell the story. Well, it turns out that Free Dorothy was my remember code.
Wow.
So in the course of this visit, he made sure he said it enough times that I would remember. And I didn't remember much while I was there. It was when I got back home afterwards that the memories just came flooding in. And the first thing that happened was my Christianity just completely fell away. It was like a flip, like a flip had been a switch had been just flipped. And it was like, I remembered all this faith, but it wasn't there anymore. And I remembered everything I had ever been taught. I just didn't believe it anymore. And I was multidimensional 24/7, didn't sleep. When I did sleep, it was only because I took something to sleep.
And this was immediately after?
Yeah, this was immediately after coming back. And my family's convinced I had a nervous breakdown. Lou has been really incredibly supportive about it. He's made a cameo in almost every video I've ever done, so he'll probably walk past.
Oh yeah, I have seen that when I was doing the video research. he was playing a slot machine on the obviously I saw one video he was playing a slot machine game.
Yeah, he loves those slot machine games. Yes. So
now, your story is, like I said, very multifaceted. But I don't want to go into your whole history per se, but I do want to give a brief rundown of your timeline. Now, just correct me if I'm wrong. You were taken from your home in California, taken cross country to Langley, to CIA headquarters, where they did a whole bunch of MK Ultra manufacturing technique stuff to you, creating alters and such. And then from there, you went to Montauk and were in programs there in the Montauk chair and such. And then was it back to Langley and then to Shula on Mars?
Yes.
Through the jump gate in New York?
And I was initially kidnapped in 1959.
1959. Describe the jump gate in New York really quick if you could.
It's in a building tall enough to have a elevator in it, and you step into what appears to be a regular elevator, and there were approximately 20 kids, all about 9 to 11 years old, and we were all wearing white hospital pajamas. And nobody said a thing about all these kids in hospital pajamas coming into this elevator. And they told
us it was big enough to fit all of you.
It was big enough to fit all of us. And they told us to stand in the middle even if we had to hug each other. And they had one control panel that was normal up and down in the building. And then they slid another control panel open, and it was what took you to Mars. And the back went hyperspace first, and the sides kind of made an oval shape. And that's why they had told us to stay away from the sides, was because they literally disappeared. You were seeing the tunnel. It was like a wormhole tunnel. And so here we were, a bunch of kids who had been through hell already, and we were clinging to each other. And it took us about 20 minutes like that to get to Mars.
Okay, I want to ask because I was about to ask that about the 20 minutes, because I was saying So when you go through this hyperspace, do you have a sensation of time?
Yeah. You have
So
time passes for you, but because it's 4D, it's not a real time.
Oh yeah, 4D is time space. Like any
Yeah.
motion through well, like that we would describe as motion in third density is time distortion, it's time travel. So that
Yeah.
it's like in poltergeist phenomenon where you see the ghost keep going back, you know, doing the same thing over and over again because it's through time. It's out of third density, fourth density phase, and so it's partially in fourth density and it's going through time.
Poltergeists are more or less stuck in a time loop.
Yes.
When we got there, the walls and doors were there, and the door in the back opened, and we were led into a lobby, and there was a sign that said "Willkommen in Mars," and of course it's in German. And there were Welcome to Mars, and there were a couple of people in uniform that were there to greet us and take us down to our dormitory.
And by this time, you say you were 9 years old?
By this time, I was 9 years old, yes.
And then they entered you directly into Shula. You say you weren't allowed to pretty much mingle with the population. You were in barracks like soldiers?
We were in barracks like soldiers. We were finally allowed to mingle with each other. And, you know, because at Langley, we weren't even allowed to mingle with each other.
Really?
Langley
was pure hell.
Langley was set up to mind fracture us, to create the required number of altars so that they could train the altars hierarchically so that each group of altars would have similar skills.
Now, Stuart Swindle talked about what was it, the 13 by 13 cube? Is that what it is?
It was a three-dimensional 13 cubic array of altars. And they treated it like you in computer programming. I'm not sure people are taught this now, but back in the day when I was a programmer, back in the 70s, we were doing what was called structured arrays. And they were usually hierarchical because you would have your initial set of parameters that would be a little different for each category. Well, that was the way they set up the altars, was it would be a little bit different for each category. And once the altars reached the point they were trainable, they would start teaching them skills. So one set might be, this was part of why they did Montauk after the mind fracture. Was
so
to help
weed out the ones that could survive.
You weed out the ones that could survive. You send them to Montauk, find out what their abilities in the chair are. And then
you have extraordinary abilities in the chair, correct? I remember a story you once told, and what really stuck out, you said that Draco that was in the room with you kind of looked like a Ninja Turtle without a shell.
He had a shell, but he's more like a leatherback turtle. Sea turtles rather than land turtles. So he had this leatherback shell, and he would hunt me down.
Because you had found a way to, what was it, when you're in the chair, it's like you're going through a tunnel, and you would find spurs off of this tunnel.
Usually holes going through the ceiling.
Interesting.
When you're going in hyperspace, there are, which is what the Montauk Tunnel was hyperspace. And it was who could control the hyperspace to travel through time, through space.
Time, space.
Time, exactly, time and space. I didn't argue, did I? and I had the ability to hop into other dimensions from hyperspace.
Is these other densities higher levels of unconscious awareness, or are these physical dimensions?
Physical dimensions. When you are in that dimension, they are just as real and physical as we are now. And they have different beings in them. They have entire ecologies. They have sentient beings that may or may not look like us. And one of the places that I went a lot, the people were very orc-like. They had brown skin, but instead of green, but they did have the tusks. And they wore basically not Middle Ages clothing, but not modern either. I guess.
Like a tunic or something?
It would be a tunic and shorter pants and socks and boots, and they would have the coat with tails. So.
Very interesting.
And they're very kind to me.
So they gave you protection?
Well,
pretty much?
I would pretty much show up in these white cotton pajamas or naked, and they would wrap me in some sort of a quilt, and they would bring me soup. So they were actually very good to me.
Real quick, do you remember any kind of social structure they had, like as far as like a hierarchy, or were they like tribal?
All I ever saw was the same little village, and they lived in what appeared to be married couples with children in their own individual dwellings. And everything looked clean. They didn't bring me into those homes. I was left where I showed up. I was just covered up and fed.
How was the soup, by the way? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was great. It was this muddy brown. I don't know what it was, but I was 6 at the time, so it wasn't like I was used to cooking. But yeah, it was good. It was warm and tasted good and filling. So.
All right, back to so you welcome to Mars, and you're in barracks, mingling for the first time with those who made it with you, which weren't many, right?
No.
What percentage would you say made it through? You say 10, 5%?
5 or 10% made it through the whole thing. I know that about 80% of us died the first year.
Damn.
So this was what was going on in the 50s. So this was the baseline where they were doing this, and they were like committed to this was what they were going to do. And they had learned this process from the Illuminati groups. So I understand from other people, notably Randy Kramer and some of the folks from the SSP group, that by the 1980s, they were a lot more gentle and that they had an 80% survival rate. So.
Hell of a change.
I guess you guys are like the guinea pigs.
Yeah. So if they're going to continue to do this, at least they're being gentler on the kids. So, but I'm still very much against this entire concept of kidnapping children to serve in space. There was nothing we do out there that cannot be done by consenting adults.
Yes, I've heard you say that before, and that is so true. I mean, there'd be people lined up around the corner had a chance to do any of the stuff that you talk about, dangerous or not, life-threatening or not. They don't need kids. I mean, it's insanity.
Yeah, they don't.
But
You don't need to be picking up little kids and torturing them.
absolutely. Now, the theme, I'm sure if you haven't picked up on yet, people will, that Penny is not very average, to say the least. She's actually super special. So when you were in Shula, as you transitioned to their military, did they realize how special you were at this time?
They thought I was dangerous. I don't remember why they thought I was dangerous. I do remember there was an incident where the Mars native raptors came through the cafeteria wall, and my abilities are linked to my own frightened state. And so I formed a force field around as many kids as I could. And it wasn't just the ones I came with. It was somewhere between 30 and 40 kids were inside this force field.
Is it this force field, this like a plasma energy field, or is it a gravitational like?
My abilities are more electronic. So I
like a plasma shield.
Like
probably a
plasma
plasma
magnetic.
Electromagnetic rather than. And I do remember some of the raptors trying to claw through it and getting shocked.
Oh yeah, that's a plasma. Yeah.
So but that's why we survived. And I don't know where the adults were, because this was just kids in here. And it was all the kids that were in Shula, and I was only able to rescue about a third of them. But when the adults showed up, what they did was, I think the proper term is retelephoning or redialing. And they went back in time and stopped the attack, and nobody died and there was no damage. So, but everybody remembered the first version. So for a little while, I was a hero.
Oh, like you said, that's interesting. You said they remember the first version. It sounded like a Mandela effect. So like it was a timeline shift because they went back in time and changed the event that happened.
But they still have memory of the fact
that
didn't happen.
That's the
so it is like a Mandela.
It's exactly like a Mandela.
Do you know, just a real quick, Stouffer stovetop stuffing? I mean, this one's really bothering me. I mean, I know a lot of Mandela effects, but did you know there's no Stouffer stovetop stuffing now?
It just says stovetop when you look on old videos.
Made by crap. It's insane.
Yeah, I don't know where it's coming from. Yeah, it never existed. I remember that because I didn't like no stuffing.
But anyways, not to
I remember there was Stouffer's. So, okay, we were from the same timeline then.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I know that there have been several timelines that have been merged into this one.
Yes, that's
and from the information I have, these were timelines that self-destructed. Nuclear war, nuclear wars, massive destruction from various viruses, and they were pinched off just before the disaster and then merged into ours.
Wow.
Damn, that's interesting. I never heard that before.
So those people don't have the memories of the disasters because they were pinched off just before that.
Right before.
And if their family members didn't have an equivalent here, they didn't make it.
Wow.
So they didn't add people, they just merged the people. So some of the people have memories of both. So yeah, it gets wild when you start getting into some of these explanations.
Yeah, the Mandela effects are crazy. Like I remember Looney Tunes with the TOON for cartoon, and it's TUNS, which means a musical melody. Like yeah, tune, like a tuning the music, the instrument. This is not cartoons. This is more evidence of that Mandela effect is real.
The Mandela effect
we
is
can go do a whole show about that.
Good.
But anyways, back to Shula. As Shula ends for you, and does everybody go into the military? Is that the thing, or
everybody that I came with went into some form of the military. We were all basically Messerschmitt Heimscheld when we got there. They were just spending the time to educate us. All of the people in the German colonies and their military are educated. You have at least the equivalent of a bachelor's in science when you get out of Schule. And you are trained for the job you will be filling. So
they don't waste no time like they do here. No.
They don't waste any time. They don't want fools. They don't want somebody that's going to go out there and redneck everything. They want someone who has a brain and knows how to use it. Even if all you're doing is shooting at the enemy, they want you to be smart.
Yeah.
And
that's a German quality.
Yeah,
they always smart at physics and math, everything.
That's their culture, is they wanted you to understand art and music and literature, and they love those epic poems that last forever.
Really?
They have.
What was their inner? Go ahead.
They still use the Eddas from the Norwegian countries for part of their, well, the enlisted men use that as the basis of their ancestor honoring religion. The Germans out there don't really have a religion. They don't believe in gods. They have an ancestor honoring, basically, solar religion for the enlisted men, and they have a secret society for the officers. And neither one honors a deity. So
is that Schwarzschild or are there various?
It's Schwarzschild.
Yeah. So what kind of entertainment did they have there? Was it, I heard you once say that they played a lot of classical music. Did they have any form of television or any TV shows or anything like that?
They had movies that you would watch on the glass pad, or if it was something they thought was really cool, you'd go into where they held the shift beginning meetings, and they'd pull down a screen and you'd watch a movie on the screen together. They had a lot of stuff that they bootlegged from Earth, but they didn't tell us it was from Earth.
Really?
They told us Earth had been destroyed.
Yeah.
So we got
like a Tony Rodriguez mission.
Well, Tony served in Nacht Waffen. Had a different position in it than I was, but it was still the same military. So, and he was on Mars. Should have been overlapping with me, because I left Mars in 1990, and that was about the time that Jason Rice got there. It was overlapping with Tony Rodriguez. It was overlapping with Randy Kramer.
Wow, that is true.
I was overlapping with Michael Ralph.
Wow, him too?
Yeah, so it was, if I was interacting with these people, I don't remember them, but I know from their testimonies that I was there the same time they were. I was
Interesting.
on Mars from 1964 to 1990. That's a long
That
time.
sounds like a.
That is a very long
That's
time.
like an operation. Like
So-
you say, they arrived almost at the same time. Like it's set up last night.
Well,
How old were you? I'm sorry. How old were you when you left Mars?
I have to do the math.
So you spent quite a deal of time in the military then.
I spent 25 years on Mars, and the first 10 years of it, I was in Shula. So they got 15
Wow.
years out of me before they shipped
Wow.
me off to Nacht Waffen.
Wow.
And
that was pretty much patrol.
it
would you
was,
say? I know you were a pilot on Mars.
I was a pilot on Mars, and most of what I did was patrol for raptor nests.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there were two races we were at war with, the raptors and the mantids, and they're not major races galactically. These are local Mars varieties.
Yeah.
And the raptors on Mars are related to the raptors on Earth that are underground.
Mm-hmm.
They're the same species, but they've been separated long enough that they're different development.
Gotcha.
And as a race, the ones on Mars are a formerly spacefaring race that is in decline. And they were just coming back up to Neolithic age.
Yeah, then you guys nuked them.
And the Germans nuked them.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not stupid. And they're bigger than we are, and they're stronger than we are, and they have 6-inch claws on each of their 3 fingers. And those things are sharp, and in a bare knuckle fight, they will win every time.
I believe that.
And so what we've got now is Randy Kramer's group is still there, and they're testing weapons on them.
Marine specialist said, I knew something was fishy about them.
Well, they're testing weapons on them. They think that if they allow these raptors to survive, that when the humans on Mars get to their eventual dark age, like we do everyone,
they'll take them over.
that they will wipe them out. And so this is a preemptive strike. And in the
preemptive strike.
And in the meantime, they're using them for target practice.
Wow.
And
Now,
I have real issues with that because these were sentient beings leaving everybody else alone until the Germans attacked them.
Yes.
So
now you say they are at war with the raptors and the mantids. I know they have a Mars version of the reptilians there as well. Now, did you ever come across any humanoid species on Mars?
yeah, Mars has what we call a native human, but their DNA is just like ours.
And what was the?
They're about 7 foot tall because the gravity is less there. They have larger chests because there's less air pressure. So they have to breathe in more to get enough air. But their basic features, they look a lot like Apache. So they have an orange tint to their skin, which is probably dietary. I don't know what they eat, but if it has a lot of keratin in it, that would explain why they're orange. And their language.
Where do they live?
They live in underground cities, and when we would approach them, they would pack up and leave. They wanted absolutely nothing to do with Earth humans. They wanted to just live in peace.
You said something about their language. What was their language?
Their language is basically the same as Sumerian. So at one point, they were either we were a colony from them or they were a colony from us, because they are us.
Any idea of their social structures, like hierarchy or family situations?
They worship the female. The female is considered the giver of life, and they go around bare-breasted because that's the source of milk, and they're treated extremely protectively by the males and honored. And when the earth males saw this, they've ended up raping many, many, many of their women. And this is part of why they move.
Wow.
They had a very spiritual belief system, and like a lot of native peoples on Earth, they were seriously taken advantage of by the Earth humans.
And I wonder, was they at a like 4th or 5th density conscious level for awareness?
They were in awareness way above where we were. I wouldn't venture to guess at what level they were.
Okay.
But they were able to pull stuff off that shocked us. So if they had chosen to be combatants, they would have been formidable.
Oh, all that fighting Jedi.
So, like, it seems to be the theme that most species and civilizations have a matriarchy hierarchy, correct? Would you say? Like, females are in charge for the most part?
Well, that's true for the Draco Empire. That's true.
What about the Orion?
True. I don't know a lot about the Orions.
Okay.
Everything I was involved with was with Draco.
Okay.
So that's what the CIA modified my DNA with. So they considered that a strength and used me to interact with the Draco on behalf of the Germans. So if you have someone who speaks Russian, are you going to spend them on the Chinese? That's basically the situation. I was modified to be able to be around Draco, so that's where they used me. So it turned into some really seriously funny situations sometimes, because, for instance, on Mars, when I was in the Valkyren, the unit of women fighter pilots, our boss was a German man, Herr Kapitan. His boss was an Alpha Drac. And when we would have morning meeting, the German would come in, start the meeting, and then leave because the Alpha Drac came in to give us our assignments. And the German
couldn't be around each other.
Couldn't be around each other because it would fry the German's brain. So it made for some serious situations because our immediate supervisor did not know what our assignments were. So
interesting.
Sometimes one of us would link with him so that he would have an awareness of who was getting what assignment. But every so often his ego would get in the way and he would deny us doing that. So we were not trying to exclude him. Now, humans have egos. What can I say?
I heard that.
That's third density conscious level.
Well, you said you're
no, I said that's third density conscious level with the ego and fear dominant.
Okay.
Now you they sent you off to Nacht Waffen because you blew up a raptor's nest, right? Because of the death of your, what was it, your husband at the time? Or
Well,
was it just your boyfriend?
De facto husband. They didn't let us get
Uh-huh.
married.
They wouldn't leave, yeah. Okay.
They
So
did not
when you,
want. They did not want Draco DNA modified people in their gene pool. So we were not allowed to marry, reproduce, but we were allowed to have relationships. So it wasn't a legal marriage, but the same guy for 17 years. What do you call it?
yeah.
That like that happen on Earth now.
Yeah. Those work out better usually though.
Yeah.
But anyway, when they sent you off to Nacht Waffen, were you part of the fleet, or were you in like a mercenary, or what was you actually were you doing?
What my ship was doing was transport.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on what we were assigned to transport. Sometimes we were transporting prisoners of war, sometimes slaves, sometimes food supplies, sometimes cyborgs. There was a regular route if we were involved in supporting the Draco. We would bring in soldiers, drop them off, wait a couple of days, they would bring us prisoners of war. We would take them back to a cyborg factory where we would pick up cyborgs made from other individuals and take them to a sale point. So, and then we would be sent back to the planet that was being invaded to pick up more prisoners of war. So it was a regular route when we were doing that. And most of the way we had cargo of some kind.
And what does your ship look like?
It was one of the older cigar-shaped ones that was polished aluminum, and with the shielding around it, it would just glow absolutely white. It would, if you saw it from a distance in Earth's atmosphere, it would look like just an absolute white cylinder light. And it was close to a kilometer long.
That's all I was just about to ask. Interesting. And would you say most of it was like the cargo bay?
Yeah, most of it was cargo bay, and most of the cargo bay was set up with bunks, because these were either humans or other sentient beings of about the same size, or cyborgs that took up about the same space.
And do you know how these ships were powered?
There were 3 different kinds of engines, and I don't know what they're all called on Earth, because they use different names for them here. One was the engine that Schauberger came up with, the anti-grav engine. And with that,
using fluid motion. He was using fluid motion to come up with that.
Yeah, you use a fluid motion, and it's got mercury with a red ingredient that keeps it from turning into gold as fast.
Red mercury is what it's called, right?
Yeah, red mercury. It's red mercury.
Wow, I never heard of that. Red mercury. Wow.
And what it does is create like a vacuum. Well, it's about gravity, but it creates like a gravity hole in front of you. So you're constantly falling into this gravity hole as you go. And that's safe for use in an atmosphere. And then there's, I guess they're calling it the EM drive. We called it the copper microwave drive. And we usually use that in deep space. But if you're in an atmosphere and you need to open a portal, that's the way to do it, is because when you open that, it forms this teardrop shaped field, and inside of that you can open a portal and it won't suck the atmosphere through it.
Wow.
Gotcha.
That's very interesting.
If you don't have it in a field, it will slowly suck the whole atmosphere off of a world. So that's not a good thing to do. And
whoa, never heard that.
And then there was another one that was like a plasma engine, but operated on a different element. And it was more of a deep space drive. A lot of what we did, though, was we would get out of the gravity of a planet and we would open a hyperspace tunnel, our own private wormhole. And we would spend a lot of time using the EM drive to go through hyperspace.
Oh, that's interesting.
And the navigator is chipped into the ship's computer. So they kind of work like they're one. And the psionic abilities of the navigator are accessed by the computer, and the math functions of the computer are accessed by the navigator.
Aren't you one of the only human navigators?
There are a few of us. I know Matt Tracy is also a navigator. So there are a few of us that are human. But most of the navigators are actually Alpha Dracs. And so I know those individuals feel really isolated being on human ships because they can't really interact with very many people. And
everybody gets fried around them.
Everybody gets fried around them, and they're social beings.
People think reptilians are like ruthless, bloodthirsty animals, but they're social like us, correct?
They're very social like us. The best description I've seen of them is on Star Trek. The Klingons. The Klingons are the way Star Trek portrayed the Draco.
And that you would say that's pretty accurate?
I'd say that's pretty accurate. They're just
interesting.
They are more honor matters to them, loyalty matters to them, support of the Empire matters to them.
Yeah, that's exactly on Star Trek.
Like
the Klingons character Worf. You see how the warriors evolve, how he teaches his son to be a warrior.
Yeah.
So yes, you saying that's how the Draco.
That's how the Draco.
Not the bad Draco element that's been, enslaving us and doing the galactic human trade. You talking about in the greater society in Alpha Draconians.
I don't believe that the Alpha Draconians are enslaving humanity. I'm sorry. I believe the Anunnaki enslaved humanity.
Oh.
And the Anunnaki are a subject race of the Draconians. But they do have some independence. And I think that the Draco are getting a bad name from the Anunnaki.
Let's talk about the Anunnaki a little.
Yeah.
First, can you describe what a general Anunnaki would look like?
Yeah, because there's confusion on it.
7 to 9 feet tall, albino Vikings. Their eye color can be bunny red, just like an albino. And most of them it is. Some of them it's gold. Some of them it's bright blue, like electric blue. And some of them it's green, even to a lime green. And they abuse a supplement called Ormus.
Oh, I heard about that. That's that mono gold.
Exactly. Well, when you're separating out the monogold, you get other things mixed in with it too, because people think you can separate out just one thing, but you can't. So if their ormus has a lot of silver to it, their skin will gradually turn a blue-gray.
Oh.
And if it has a lot of copper in it, they will gradually turn a light green.
Interesting.
But they're still the same people. And they call themselves Jahami.
Yes.
And they call their home planet Jahami, except when it's passing through the plane of the other planets. And then they call it the crossing, which in their language is Nibiru.
Yes, I was just about to say. So that is Nibiru. Now, is the time cycle that people usually talk about of it crossing correct?
Yeah.
What is it, like every
3,000 years?
72,000 years?
36,000 years.
36,000 years. Yeah.
No, 3,600 years.
100 years.
And from my calculations, I think we're still about 200 years away from it. But everybody wants to say, it's here, here. I think it's fear porn at this point.
It's been an ongoing thing since people started hearing about Nibiru.
Yeah.
It's here.
Yeah, I don't think it's here right now. I think it's approaching, and we're going to have more and more interaction with these beings while it's approaching, because it's an easy time for them to come visit.
Gotcha. Now, is it true that they originally started mining this planet for the gold to fix their atmosphere?
Yeah, because every time they get too close to the sun, they lose a lot of their atmosphere. And they've had 2 nuclear wars on their homeworld.
Interesting.
At least. My understanding is that 85% of their males are now sterile.
I've heard that. Maybe I heard it from you.
To me, I don't see how a race can survive that.
Yeah, that seems like it's only a matter of time.
So
but, on their homeworld, could you describe their homeworld? Would it look like? Do they have like cities, or is it like tribal, or does it look like ancient times?
I was there in 2018. I got pulled there. And their main they actually orbit around a brown dwarf star. So it's warm there like it is here. And so they have liquid seas and rivers and such. And when the ship approached, I saw the wharfs, and the whole hillside above was covered with what looked like Greek-style temples all over it. I don't know if it was white stone or if it was all painted white, but it was gorgeous. Trees in between, and the conference room where I was interrogated had dark wood paneling, and it was huge, long table. They had their group was normally 12 advisors and the king, and they also had a couple of other people in there, and they had moved this device in to the room that's called a truth machine, and it's for interrogating extraterrestrials. And they had me in that, and they had that in there too. So it was a good 20 feet tall and a cylinder. And what they were doing with me was removing an altar, recording its memories, and then destroying the altar. And they had just finished the second one when Nacht Waffen showed up and rescued me. So
Wow.
I'm assuming that they completed the process and killed me, and that Nacht Waffen redialed to come get me.
God.
So
Interesting.
I really don't know why
So
they
they
would
would
have.
have a lot of technology, right?
Oh yeah, they have some major
So
technology.
it looks like ancient Greece, but very technified, or whatever you would say.
Yeah, it looks like you're looking at Athens, Greece, for their capital city, but it's very technological.
Do you
And
remember any kind of like food or anything that they would eat?
they actually eat a lot of beef and drink a lot of beer.
So they had cattle and such, or were they
They
using
had
replicators?
cattle. They were not eating anything replicated. They were going completely natural. And I never did see any of their women.
Wow.
I only saw the men. And they were not very friendly. At least from my point of view, they were not friendly at all.
And did they dress like Vikings would dress, or did they have togas? Or
They had the robe that's portrayed in the statues from Nineveh.
Greek, like a toga, like a Greek robe kind of thing.
A robe that is short. It comes across from one arm to the other, where it's short, and then as it goes past the arm, it gets long and comes back and wraps around the shoulder. And how long the fringe is their status in society.
Oh, interesting.
So, because I saw people in the streets that didn't have any fringe at all, but whenever I was in this council, most of them had fringe that was at least 4 inches long, and the king had closer to 6 inches.
Interesting. And even in the streets, you didn't see any women?
Nope. No.
Was everybody just walking around? Did they have any kind of vehicles, like hovercrafts? Like horses?
It seemed like they were on scooters, but floating on air.
Like a hoverboard, like Back to the
Future
or something.
They're on Star Wars with the repulsor lift.
So they were hovered. Yeah.
Now, can you give us a brief history of how the Anunnaki came about to enslaving humanity? Now, they came here for our gold, and did they create us or modify us, or
I
being
think
a separate race that was already here?
Modify is more accurate, because they took Homo erectus and interbred with it. They used Homo erectus eggs and Jahami sperm and created a hybrid that was sterile. And then they had to work on that hybrid to make it fertile. And boy, howdy did that work.
That's what researcher Michael Tessarian talks about. He talked about the first Adam and the second Adam, different experiments. That sounds like that his testimony.
Well, from what I can tell, there were at least 6 tries. And they ended up with one that was really smart, but basically had no soul. And it tried to create spaceports, so they had to dumb it down. And in the process of dumbing that one down, they got us. So they had originally created humans to be at about 200 IQ.
Wow.
And they decided that that was too much of a threat to them. So, but they made
Yeah, they made us some dumb motherfuckers now.
They made us. They made us about 100 IQ, but they gave us something called the metagene, and that was something of an accident. But
can you explain that a little bit more? The metagene, is that like superhero strength, or something that we all have powers built in, or?
It's what allows us to create our own reality.
Gotcha.
Whoa.
Like a co-creative consciousness type of
The
thing?
co-creative consciousness, yes. And they were hoping that we would be dumb enough that we wouldn't figure out how to use it.
Well, up until now, that's been the case. Well, actually, it's been pretty much hijacked from us too, though, hasn't it? Like, that's pretty much what these Illuminati cabal people do. They hijack our co-creative consciousness to make their reality their way, correct?
Well, that's happened, and there's also, it wasn't mixed in evenly. So some control freak types went through and started eliminating the people that had the most of it. And notably, the Catholic Church has done that with their witch hunts. And so any area where they burn witches will have less metagene than the rest of the population. And when those ethnic groups that had had their own removed went into other areas of the world, they tended to try to exterminate the ethnic groups that still had it. And that's
i.e. the Native Americans?
The Native Americans, the Native Africans, the Native Australians, the natives everywhere.
Yeah.
And so that explains 90% of Earth's history since 3000 BC.
Yeah.
Now, what I heard, because I have read this China information called from the Cassiopean, and they're supposed to be the group that Simon Parks, I don't know if you know about Simon Parks, Contact D.
I know about Simon Parks, but I haven't been listening to a lot of his stuff.
Yes, he's connected with the mantids. The Cassiopean is what the mantids are connected to.
Okay.
And the original, they said, was 12 genetic lines, which I think relates to the 12 strand original DNA. And then, like you say, you don't know about the Orion. Well, the Orion group added like 7 of their, which the Orion group is several different ET groups. And they added several of their genetics that add up to the total of 22. That's why it's like different races, because there's 22 different genetics from around the galaxy, from these warring races across the galaxy, which humanity is in the middle of. So we became a hybrid experiment of this whatever the reason that they mixed us all together like this.
Well, I know there was a time in history where most of us were wiped out. And so what was left of humanity is more alike than a single family of chimpanzees. So a lot of these racial differences are nonsense, people's imagination. Now, I have heard from, I'm not sure if they're real Illuminati or if they're pulling my leg, okay? But I have heard that if you want to see the different strains of humanity, you look for the blood types.
Yes, interesting. That's why
Not
I wanted to
the
ask
skin
about.
color, not the eye color, not the hair color. You go for the blood types.
Yes, I want to talk. That's what I wanted to talk about, because like I say, this whole situation what we're doing right now, I'm not used to doing interviews, so I'm learning this as we go along. But the blood type, because I watched one of your interviews and you said that AB negative was Draco and Zeta mix, and you said AB negative was Zeta and the
Why don't you go ahead and give us a rundown?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just tell her the different these blood types, because I think it's 8 total. Then you got RH negative.
What this guy from the Illuminati told me is O positive is your basic human. Okay. O negative is a Jahami hybrid. A negative is a Draco hybrid. B negative is the Zeta hybrids, and the AB are where, and you were correct, where a Draco hybrid and a Zeta hybrid crossed. Now, when you have the positive behind any of those letters, it means that they have interbred with the basic humans.
Wow, never heard of that ever before.
So
that's interesting.
This is what I got from them. So, you know,
So
it's
being
possible.
A positive, I'd be an interbred Draco.
Yeah, well, I'm O positive, but my mom was A negative, so I'm a Jahami hybrid that has been crossed with a normal.
Interesting.
Half, or as Tolkien would put it, I'm a half elf. So
Now, can you explain the RH and where that comes into things? The RH negative, because that's the one to get attacked by the immune system of the mother. I think she got to have RH positive, whatever. But the immune system attacked the baby. Go ahead.
What it is that your normal average human is RH positive because they've got the gene from that Homo erectus mom.
So what would RH negative be?
Where that was removed. So that happens through selective breeding. Meaning that you've got so many generations of that ET in there that the part from the Homo erectus is gone. Now, why did they have to interbreed with Homo erectus? Since you didn't ask that, I'll answer it anyway. It's because our atmosphere has nitrogen in it. And nitrogen is poisonous to all of these ETs. They cannot live here unless they've interbred with something that can live with nitrogen in the air.
And so that's probably why you see a lot of these old paintings and things with the masks on these guys.
Oh yeah, the rock structure and stuff. Yeah, yeah. You talking with they got masks. Yeah, and they call them astronauts.
Yeah, the ancient astronauts with the tubes, that's because they can't breathe a nitrogen atmosphere. If you've ever studied chemistry, nitrogen is very reactive.
Yes, it is.
So how can we live with it? Is because we've adapted to it over the millennia. And that's
Would you say that's rare around the cosmos, nitrogen planets?
That's very rare around the cosmos to have an oxygen, nitrogen-based atmosphere and have life. That's very rare. So it would be like...
You think that was on purpose? Somehow, some way, maybe? Or was this planet like poisoned at one time with nitrogen?
It might very well have been poisoned. But we're still living with it.
Well, life is very adaptive, you know?
Exactly. There are...
Interesting because the astronauts breathe pure oxygen. You saying when you, the nitrogen, the one
they have a mixed astronaut, don't they?
I think it's pure oxygen.
No, they have it. Usually, it's mixed with hydrogen.
Oh, okay.
You know, they're not breathing anything straight because you know, if we breathe straight oxygen, we end up with our retinas frizzing out, tiny bleeds.
Wow.
In fact, I went to high school with a girl that was born at 7 months, and they put her in straight oxygen, and she was blind because it fried out her retina.
Oh,
wow. I didn't.
So that's how I know
Oh,
some
yeah.
of these things is,
Oh, okay.
I've lived. So
I hear that. Now, let me ask you a question. I heard you once talk about how you reincarnated from one of the personal guard of the Queen Mother of the Draconian Empire.
you heard that one. Okay.
So can you give a little explanation on that?
Okay, I believe in reincarnation.
Of course.
And I'll just state that for the record. One of the things that they do when you're in the SSP is they do a regression to find out who you were in past lives. Because they are looking for ET past lives where they can take the technology from your memories. So it's not for my benefit, it's for theirs that they did this. So I had a past life where I was an Alpha Draconian princess. I was sister to the then queen, and I served as a court advisor. And there was a coup attempt. And I was standing with my sister, the queen, and her consort, the king. And I was trying to stop the coup. And both the king and I were killed in the process. Well, it's been enough centuries later. She's the Queen Mother now, but she recognized me as the person who died defending her. And she has been honoring her life debt by sending guards to keep me from being injured. So they're not in 3D physical. They're 60, I think is where they are. So I can see them, I interact with them, I hear them talk to me. They keep a lot of riffraff out of my energy field. I've had readers go batshit when they saw them, assuming they were demonic, and they're not. And
can you describe the Queen Mother?
She's in the last quarter of her life expectancy. So she,
which is, by the way,
her expected lifespan is 500 million years. And she's in the last quarter of that. And
billion, what the hell?
You know, this is how
so
life
they really
is.
robbed you of some life, that coup attempts, huh? A lot of years.
My soul has been alive the whole time. I'm just not a Draco anymore.
Yeah.
But she's the white color, and it's not white like this. It's white like a sheet of paper.
Oh, okay.
And she has lime green eyes, and she does have a bit of a snout, more than they usually draw her. She has beautiful wings. They stretch out. They're maybe 20 feet out on each side.
That's big enough for them to fly.
Yeah, she can fly. And
get lift.
And she doesn't have the really big, thick legs like some of them are drawn. She's more human proportioned. She has tiny scales, They're not monster scales. They're, you know, if you rubbed over her scales, it would feel like snake skin. It wouldn't feel like a crocodile.
Alligators.
Yeah. So she's a very elegant being. She's used to being respected and obeyed. She and I had an incident where she was interfering in my life. And about a year later, I found out she was correct. But at the time, I was really pissed. It would have been nice. It would have been nice if she had told me. They are carnivores.
Yes, I was about to say. Do they eat anything else besides humans? Like, what do they have cattle? Do they have livestock?
They have livestock. They started eating humans during the Lyran Wars, mostly because it scared the Lyrans. And then they decided they liked the taste. And they don't eat as many of us as everybody thinks they do.
More like a delicacy, maybe?
We're more
saved for the elite.
Saved for the elite, and Earth is part of the Draconian Empire, but it is also a galactic authority protectorate. As long as it was just advanced races like the Jahami, then it was part of the empire. Once they created us, and we got to a point where we had basic civilization, we became a protectorate. And so the rules changed. So it was actually, the prime is actually a real thing. And it was a violation of the prime for them to...
Prime directive?
Well, they don't call it the prime directive. It's a body of law called the prime.
Gotcha.
And it relates to how advanced races interact with primitive ones. And it was a violation of that to create a slave race from the native Homo erectus. And in fact, the Galactic Authority is hunting down those Jahami who were involved that are still alive. And they are going to be facing trial for it.
Now that brings me to my next question. Now, you have witnessed a couple of these trials, correct? Can you explain a little bit about that?
The Council of Five does the trials. It used to, a long time ago, be a Council of Nine, but 4 of the races have, well, they're no longer in 3D. Okay, they're bodiless, so they're no longer in 3D. So it's the Council of Five, and most of them look like grays. So you've got a representative from each of the races behind a table, and the accused is in front of them, and they have a defense attorney, and there's a set of prosecutors. And it's in the round, and the people on the people, I use people loosely, the people on the back side of it get to see a screen, so they can witness what's going on too. And there are 3 pleas: innocent, guilty, and guilty but repentance. If you're innocent and can prove it, you're let go. If you're guilty, you're executed, and your soul is turned over to the Lords of Karma, who are very real. And guilty but repentant, you're installed with a chip where if you relapse, you will you will be executed on the spot. And the chip is set for parameters, so you don't even have to have a judge involved. You're just gone. And they go through. Okay, I witnessed the trials of Baphomet, who was found guilty and executed in 2018.
And how was he executed?
His head was exploded, and his soul turned over to the Lords of Karma.
Interesting.
And
who are the Lords of Karma?
Yeah, who I never heard of them. Who are them?
they are related to Earth exclusively, and I'm not sure where in history they came from. But they are very real now, and if the Council of Five finds you guilty and
I
executes,
wonder, like you saying that you don't know, like it don't like they always been here, because like the Archon Ascension trap that's been the soul trap, and also some information come from this source called Cobra, where talked about the Archons been controlling the soul system for at least 26,000 years. So I'm saying that's how long the Archon trap probably been set up, and so how the Lords of Karma could have been set up.
well, one of my past lives was longer ago than that, and the Lords of Karma were involved. But
Oh, okay. So they've
So-
been here for quite a while.
Okay.
they've been here for a long time. I'm not sure how long. They have been here as long as the Anunnaki Jahami have been here. So
Do they? Can you describe what they look like?
Yeah, the Jahani.
No, the Jahani's the Anunnaki. Can you describe what the Lords of Karma look like?
they're more spirit, and they can take whatever appearance they want. So describing them is kind of pointless. They-
Gotcha.
They are basically in control. If you die on Earth or related to a life that was on Earth, they take control of you when you die. And they plan your next lives according to what you did wrong. Well, for Baphomet, he's going to have a lot of trouble. Now, with
Now,
Baphomet,
what is
What is
Baphomet a reptilian? Is he an Anunnaki?
Yeah, what is that?
Baphomet was a Alpha Drac commoner. He was a adrenochrome addict.
Do he look like reptilian?
Yeah, he was a Red Draco.
Mm.
Oh, wow. Red Draco.
He was
Ooh.
a Red Draco.
Yeah.
So
Never
the
heard of that.
figure that we know as the Red Devil was him.
Oh, Satan. Oh, Baphomet represents Satan. Oh, I mean Lucifer or whatever.
No, they're not. They're individual beings. Baphomet is Baphomet,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
they draw him with a goat's head because they didn't want to associate him with the Draco.
Oh,
But
okay.
he had horns like a goat. He had a narrow face like a goat, and he was a lot heavier than they draw
Reptilian got
him.
horns too.
And when he would show up in court, he was wearing a black Armani suit and
What?
tried to look really classy. And
How old was he?
he's
I'm sorry. How tall was he?
he's about 12 feet tall. So yeah, he had a special made suit for him and shoes. And
Hey, correct me if I'm wrong, but you pretty much were instrumental in his conviction, correct?
I was instrumental in his arrest. He thought he had figured out the prime and how to get around it. And okay, galactic law is based on consent. So if you are presented with an idea and you say nothing, you have consented. So all of this bullshit about what you resist persists, that's wrong. That's backwards.
Well, yeah, a lot of new age stuff is bullshit. I've been talking about it on my live a lot.
It's bullshit. So under galactic law, if you are opposed to something, you have to say no out loud.
Mm-hmm.
And so what he was doing with his followers was they were drugging people so they could not say no. They thought they had gotten around the law, except his followers forgot to drug the babies. Babies are pre-verbal. How do they say no? By kicking and screaming. So that was what we got him on. All of those older kids that they drugged, we could not convict him on. We convicted him on the infants and toddlers that they forgot to drug.
Oh, brilliant.
And
so he thought he was going to get off in his Armani suit? Or he already knew he was done?
He thought he was going to get off. He thought he had covered every territory. And I was the one who arrested him, because I went to the Council of Five first and I said, this is my theory. And I cleared it with them first. And they said, you're right. That is how human infants say no. So then I arrested him and he was like, you're kidding me. I go, no. And he was like, we'll see. I'm going to beat this. And I'm like, okay, we'll see how it goes. And
that's fantastic.
I had been introduced to him when I was about 14. I lived in Lancaster, California, and I was picked up by the CIA and taken to a Baphomet ritual in Los Angeles because they said they didn't know how much Draco DNA they had shot me up with. So they weren't sure if I was safe to be in the general population. So they said they were taking me there to test if I was going to shapeshift. And I didn't. If I had, they would have killed me on the spot. So I already had met him decades ago. And so this was why I was able to arrest him, was because that connection had already been made at that ritual.
Could he shapeshift?
Not that I ever saw. I have never seen anyone Draco shapeshift.
Interesting. Have you seen shapeshifting period?
I've seen videos of it on YouTube, but I've not seen it in person. So I find it really hard to believe. Simply because I don't, he didn't, he's full blood. I haven't seen any Draco anywhere shapeshift. They do wear a thing like a watch that they can present a hologram.
Yes.
And that's mostly to keep from terrifying humans.
Yeah.
You know, we are an easily frightened lot.
And there's a lot of, would you say there's a lot of reptilians that live among us, posing as the elite?
My impression is that most of the elite are Shahami hybrids.
Interesting.
I haven't been able to track any of them to Draco. I've been able to track most of them to Shahami. When you start looking in their family tree, you look for Odin, Vodin, Enki, Poseidon, Venus, I think Forniot, I think is the name of one of them. So if you start finding those people in their family tree, you've got Shahami.
Gotcha.
And I think a lot of this stuff out there is just bullshit. Fear porn.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha,
So
gotcha.
when I start listening to somebody out there and they start coming up with a bunch of bullshit that cannot be proven, then I stop listening to them.
Didn't you also witness the trial of one of the Jahani?
Yeah, I witnessed the trial of Marduk.
Marduk?
Yeah, Marduk. Marduk was on trial for violation of the prime because he was instrumental in dumbing us down, for crimes against the sentient race because he enslaved us and used us as super soldiers, and for corruption as El, which is a religious position. And he was, as part of that position, he was required to hold court, and he was insisting that he be given blood offerings before he would hear a case. And that was a violation. And he was found guilty but repentant on all charges. So he will not be allowed a position of authority again. And if he's microchipped so that if he relapses, he will be exploded. And his trial was over in August last year.
This Marduk being or whatever, what density this the consciousness is this third, fourth?
I don't worry about the consciousness level. I worry about the man was in a 3D body. He was a physical being.
So it's just a physical being. It's not a soul from a higher level.
I don't worry about where their soul is from. He was in a physical body doing things to physical people.
And he looked like a Viking?
And he looked like a Viking.
What color was he? What color was his
He was
skin?
kind of he was a blue color.
Blue color?
It was a blue color from the silver. But
okay, now I want to talk a little bit about the Guardians and how they are pushing Nazi colonists back into the solar system. Or I'm sorry, not Nazis, but Germans. Das Bundes, not Waffen.
Thank you. When they went to space, they stopped being Nazis.
Yes.
They found the interaction with the Draco convinced them right away that all humans have more in common than any of us do with any ET. And so they have been disillusioned of their weirdness.
Indeed.
They did think that they were the superior race, and now they found out they're not. They did know that they were being hunted down and exterminated by several organizations on Earth, and that's why they left Earth. And they kind of had the attitude that the ends justified the means. And they're still suffering from that particular delusion. And because of the ends justifying the means, they've done some pretty horrific things that they're basically completely blind to. They have a lot of slavery, which we all know is wrong. They have a lot of cyborgs, which is worse than slavery. slavery, you have a chance to be free. Once you're in a robot body, you're stuck. And in order to have their territory basically free to themselves, they had to make a deal with the Draco to assist them in putting down rebellions. Now, you hear a lot about their military and all this. Well, their military is not out doing their own wars. Their military is assisting the Draco in putting down internal rebellions. So they've become a branch of the Draco military. And they're not even out doing new conquests. They're just taking care of in-home rebellions.
What about Jason Rice's testimony talking about how they pretty much do like false flags on worlds, try and take them over and then put financial systems in place and other society things, hierarchies?
I have not listened to most of Jason Rice's testimony because I didn't want to confuse my own memories with his.
Absolutely, I can understand that.
What I do know is that in most worlds, the Draco come in, once they're accepted, that they take a certain percentage of the gross planetary product as taxes, and that it's based on the year of the Draco homeworld, the Alpha Drac homeworld. So it's not our planetary year, it's their planetary year. And they come in and they get their percentage and they leave. And as long as you pay your taxes or have a good reason to not, they leave you alone.
Do we pay taxes on this planet?
Huh?
Do we pay taxes on this planet to them?
Yes.
And to this planet, what is a draconian year in Earth years?
I'm not real sure on that particular one. It's somewhere around 5 years ours, but I'm not sure exactly. So, but yeah, the elite have been paying taxes to the Draco since they were the elite. And the Shahami were paying before that. The Shahami were who put us into the Draco Empire.
Gotcha.
And since we're a protectorate, they're considered to be our parent race, and they're still responsible for us.
Is that the Jahani or the Draconian?
The Shahami. They are considered our parent race. They are considered to be not doing their duty by us, and that's why they're being arrested for violation of the crime. And since they're coming back towards us in their orbit, we can expect more interference from them over the next couple of 100 years.
Now, back to the Guardians bringing Das Bundes back into the solar system. You were a part of some of these missions, correct?
Correct.
Now, can you describe exactly what's going on out there?
Exactly what's going on out there. What you've got are 6 major factions out there, all of them grabbing for resources that belong to somebody else. All of them are grabbing prisoners of war and turning them into cyborgs for sale. All of them are raining havoc on any world they come in contact with. Now, the Germans are being sent back first because they made it the furthest out. So all of the Earth human factions are being brought back to the solar system.
Mm.
They're not going to necessarily be, they're not necessarily going to be on Earth, but they're going to be in the solar system. Instead of the soul trap being Earth, it's going to be the Oort cloud. Everything inside the Oort cloud will be trapped here. So they're starting with the colonies furthest out and bringing us all back. So you've got the Germans, who have not really gotten along with anybody else out there because they don't trust anybody. And when they've needed help, they've usually called on Kruger. Okay, then you've got planetary corporations, what Corey Good calls ICC, and they are out there specifically to chase down the Germans.
Really?
Really. That's their whole reason to be out there, is to chase down the Germans. And then they found out
as far as catching up to them, or as far as extinguishing them?
Extinguishing them. And so
they got the most advanced technology.
Who would you say is the most advanced technology? The ICC or the Germans?
At this point, the Germans do, but ICC is catching up fast. Then you have the mercenary groups, Kruger and Monarch, and they're just about evenly matched. And the main difference between them is that Monarch shoots up their people with black goo, and Kruger enhances them with mechanical bits. So by
nanobots, nanotechnology and stuff like that?
No, it's like they'll cut off their arm and insert a gun. You know the Borg in Star Trek? That's Kruger.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay, so you've got those two, and they usually fight for different sides. And then you've got Solar Warden, which is also trying to chase down and exterminate the Germans, and they basically never left the solar system. They're running around, and there will be people who have got permission from the Germans or ICC to come into the solar system, and Solar Warden will stop them, catch them, and vivisect them.
Yes.
So they're like primitive. And then you've got the Earth Defense Force, which has now become legal as the Space Force. And that has always belonged to the Air Force. Now, the Solar Warden has always belonged to the Navy. So they're out there, they're all independent, and there are literally thousands of other programs out there. Some are CIA, some are NSA, some are Department of Defense, some are from other countries. You know, there are thousands of other programs, and they each have a different agenda. And all of them are going to be sent back to the solar system, where all humanity is going to be given a choice to either become a level 0 civilization or be sent back to the Stone Age.
Make the right one. What are you saying?
Oh yeah, I want to talk about because you mentioned Solar Warden, but then Randy Kramer talks about this Radiant Guardian. Do you know what they do? What is this Radiant Guardian?
I've never heard of those.
Yeah, that's what Randy Kramer talks about.
I thought there was an offshoot of Solar.
Because he said that they go out the system. You know, he was saying they go out the solar system into other sources.
Well,
he said he never been there though.
The Solar Warden pretty much sticks to home. They see themselves as patrolling the solar system. and they haven't gone out much. And they've even been staying away from the Shahami because their homeworld is in our solar system. Yeah, it's kind of ironic. They're going to be sticking our parent race in the solar system with us. So you know we're going to be contacted. And the Shahami have a couple of factions, one of which was under Marduk, and they're now leaderless because he's not allowed to go back into a position of authority. And they were in rebellion to the main group on the planet. And then Enki and Enlil were at war over who was going to be king. Well, now Nengish Zeta is king. So in Egypt he was known as Thoth.
Thoth, really? Thoth is king now?
Thoth is now king.
Wasn't Thoth supposed to be good? Or relatively speaking?
You're talking about an ET. Good is relative.
Well, like less sadistic than, let's say, Enlil. Was Enlil the bad one?
Enlil was the one that kept wanting to destroy us, and Enki was the one that kept wanting to teach us stuff.
Yes, yes. So,
he's not necessarily any better. He just wanted to teach us stuff.
Yeah, okay. I got you.
So they all have their own agendas. They all have their own personalities. They all, in a lot of ways, they're like people.
You say that name for Thoth again? What was that?
Nengish Zeta.
Nengish Zeta.
No, we got it on the thing. We can listen.
Yeah.
Now we want to get, because we about to my battery running out on the phone, so I want to get to like some questions we just want to ask you. We got your backstory, we got your mid story, we got. Oh yeah, I do want to talk about these altars, like, because I watched like several of your interviews where you talk about these altars are active now. So like you got current, some of your altars got current operations, or like what probably the Starfleet doing or whatever. So that's still going on. So I was like, because I don't know how these altars work. I don't know if this is like some quantum entanglement phenomenon where you can, like, they pass through different, points in time, past, future, present. So how do these altars work? And then we're gonna get to the questions you want to ask.
Okay, to make an altar, they traumatize you, and a child's mind will split.
Is there like a soul fracture?
Yes, it's like a soul fracture.
Is that
and it makes a bubble to hold that memory, and how big the bubble is depends on how bad it was what happened to them. And so the standard was to create just under 2,200 altars. So it takes a while to do that to a child.
Of course, all that torture.
And so each of those altars was created by a trauma. So it's like when you take a mirror and bust it up and you've got all these little chunks. That's what I'm like. That makes sense. That's what I'm actually like. I'm a mirror that's been busted. And
that also means that, like, any moment one of those altars can come through.
Yeah. I have at least one day a week where I have an altar comes through that drives Lou crazy. He says she won't take my meds, she won't eat, she gives him hell. Generally acts like a bitch. In fact, one day he said if she were a man that he would punch her. So, yeah.
Wow.
So this is what he lives with, and
he's a good man. True love.
He's a very good man, and I'm grateful that he tolerates her for me. And My family members have altars,
Really?
and my mother has at least 3, and 2 of them hate me. And so family get-togethers turn into a nightmare, and I usually leave early because
Wow.
she will be going along fine and suddenly flip and become so nasty that I could just say, "Bye, Mom." So yeah, life with alters is not fun. So when I'm taken, Nacht Waffen uses me in this body. So what they do is they pick me up, they age regress me, well, they take a shot, like a screenshot of what my body is like when they pick me up. Because when they bring me back, they match it.
Interesting.
And there have been times that they have decided to fix things, and yes, my doctor has noticed.
That was my next question.
Yeah, so, but they take me for my service, and because of whatever genetic abilities that I have, they usually keep me for 60 years. And they use me in my body, and when the time's up, they bring me back, and they put me back to this. And my nails will grow.
You say every time they take you for 60 years?
Nacht Waffen does.
So every time they take you, you're serving a whole another 60 years?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. You said,
wow.
What?
And so I experience it linearly. I'm here, I go through all of that, and then I'm age regressed and brought back. And
you said this is nightly, daily, whatever?
Not right now. I haven't been taken for a couple of nights. It's not every night, but it's at least once a week.
And then when they do say you spend 60 years doing whatever you're doing out there?
That's a lot of missing information. What?
And then if they take me for Kruger, because I have alters serving in Kruger, there they put me in a clone body. Well, you can only be in a clone body for 20 years because the soul that would be in the clone pushes you out.
Is that Starbuck, the one that?
Starbuck was one of them. She has been returned and reintegrated, and that was what the CIA got mad at me about, was reintegrating Starbuck, and they broke my shoulder last summer. Jesus. So they told me not to reintegrate another navigator. So, but when you're in a clone body, your natural body is in one tank, and the clone body is in another tank, and there's a computer relay in between. And they literally take your consciousness out of your body and impose it on the clone. And then they pull you out, and they activate the altar they want using code words. And you are that altar for the next 20 years, unless for some reason that clone gets killed.
So well, you have multiple identities out there at the same time then?
It's by location. It's by location. It's not because I do one, then the other, then the other, then the other, and in between I'm here. So it's because...
So it'd be like you daydreaming. When you had to buy
except it's real.
Yeah.
So because it's still my consciousness, and it's actually in the same time frame, sometimes I will piggyback on the altar and be able to see through their eyes what they're doing.
Wow.
At first I could control what they did too, but I blew up a cyborg factory on Mars, and the CIA got mad about that and took away that ability.
Wow. Now, when you're in these mercenary programs, are you familiar with the TV show Dark Matter? You ever seen that by any chance? It's like a mercenary.
Yeah, I saw that. Mine are not that far out. Mine are more like World of Warcraft or something like that. I'm in armor and I'm fighting and I'm being a navigator. Apparently navigators are rarer compared to other things, and so I spend a lot of my alters are navigators.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they don't want to waste that skill.
Yeah.
But
oh yeah, okay.
I have a couple of them that the CIA uses themselves, and they use them in my body, but I'm not gone that long, usually a year or two. But
okay, we I want to just ask some general questions as we get close to ending this. Like, you wanna go with your question?
Right.
Okay. Like, are you aware of what happened to, like, because you know the asteroid field was a planet? Are you aware of what happened? They call it Maldet. Are you aware of the history, like why that was blown up? I mean, was there some bigger war in the solar system that you got a past life? Were you aware of that? The history? What happened to Maldet?
There was a civilization in the solar system that was centered on Maldek, and this is a strategically important solar system. We're very close to a major portal for the entire galaxy.
That was Corey good.
Yeah. And they decided to stop paying their taxes to the Draco. And so there was a planet basically dropped on them.
Really?
And
how was that? Were they like
you said a planet collided with Maldet?
No, a planet was aimed at them.
Really?
Most interplanetary warfare is based on rocks being dropped from space.
Really? Is it like, do they like hurl it through the solar system, or do they like send it through a portal?
It's like you tractor beam it with you, you get into orbit, you just let it go. Gravity does the rest.
That's like I say, what you're saying, that's what this contactee named Alex Carrier, who's an astronomer contactee, he talks about that Maldet was hit with a planet.
Yeah, Maldek was hit with a planet. And there are reasons to believe that the Shahami homeworld was that planet, because there's lots of information about Pluto was originally a moon of Neptune, and
this is what Alex Carrier talks about.
That some of the moons of Saturn were taken into the orbit of Jupiter instead, and that Saturn used to be a lot closer to Earth, and that it stopped being, and you know that's why one of them, Neptune or Uranus, is actually tilted where it's on its equator spinning instead of being on the ecliptic plane and spinning.
Yeah, something hit it.
Something hit it.
With physics, it won't, a planetary formation, it won't form like that. It has something had to tip it over.
Yeah, so there's a lot of anomalies in the outer solar system that are consistent with something coming through and hitting things. And if you've got bodies in space, their magnetism, their polarity, won't allow them to actually hit. But it can flip them over, pole flips, it can do partial flips, it can make the crest flip, it can do all sorts of things, including suck all the dirt off. And you can tell from the way Mars looks, the whole northern hemisphere has had 5 miles of dirt sucked off it. So
oh yeah, let's get to that, because
so
remember I was telling you earlier about the I was telling you about the Orions. Well, there's information out there from other testimony that Maldat was Orion territory, and what arrived in Maldat and Sultan was something called the Black League, and they was running away from the Orion Empire, and they represent like the Rebel Alliance in Star Wars, because the Star Wars mythology supposed to be this Orion Wars that lasted for like 600,000 years in the Milky Way galaxy. So that's what I say, that was interesting. And what you talk about with Mars, but Mars was been a moon on Maldat, before the whatever blew it up.
I'm not sure where the inner solar system planets came from. They're all a lot. Yeah. They're all a lot smaller. I know that the Jahami say that Earth was part of Maldek, and that's why the Pacific Ocean is so flat. It's because that was the part that was attached, and over time it's starting to spheroid, but that it hasn't quite made it yet. And I know from space, Earth is lumpy like a potato. It's sort of a sphere, but it's lumpy.
Is that why they never show us the full picture?
Yeah, it's because it's lumpy. It's not a perfect sphere. It's lumpy like a potato, and it's flattish on the Pacific side.
That'll probably ruin all their signs.
That's what Neil Tyson said. He said it's shaped like a pear. He's one of the mainstream signs. He said it's shaped like a pear. But I'm saying it's like what you talk about. Yeah.
And it's not the perfect, pretty thing that they show in the artwork. It's lumpy, but it's still more round than not.
Okay.
And
now, this other question. Well, you can go ahead and finish.
Earth's moon came with it from Maldek, and it's a constructed thing. It
shows the same face every day. That's not. I know physics, so I know that makes no sense, because torque forces would cause it to rotate from gravitational torque forces.
Yeah, it's not a natural object, and neither are the moons of Mars. They're not natural objects.
Yeah, Alex Carey talks about that too. Okay, the next question I want to ask you is, with your altars, I mean, how far has the Nacht Waffen spread out there in the galaxy? Do you know, a number of the systems, or the average system that they control out there, star systems?
I know they have 1,000 colonies in the Sagittarius arm of the Milky Way.
Whoa, that's a lot of territory.
They have traveled back in time 400 years to found some of them. So some of the colonies.
That's why they spread so fast.
Yeah, when you use, I'm blanking on the name. When you travel through dimensions, you could also travel in time. So it's a matter of when you want to come out, as well as where. And so they picked 400 years as the most practical extreme. And they went back in Earth history 400 years and started picking up their own people that died in wars and plagues to man these colonies.
Whoa, that's so interesting.
And how many colonies do you think went back 400 times? Most of them, or half of them?
Probably half of them are 400 years old. The rest are younger. And they all of these 1,000 colonies have at least 1 billion people. So we're talking, there are going to be trillions of German people brought back to the solar system. And
the hell are they gonna put them at? On other, they will have to put on other planets.
yeah, they're going to be putting them on other planets. They're not going to be coming to Earth. And there's lots of moons around the gas giants, and they're Saturn. Saturn is where the Guardians have their base. So it's the only actual planet that's off limits.
Yeah,
The
they're talking about that
Guardian's
count
base,
to 9.
the Guardian's base is it actually on a planetoid, or is it like a space station?
It's on the planet itself. It's a regular military base. And the Guardians that I know...
It has a surface?
Yeah, 7. Alex.
It has a surface. And, okay, the Guardians that I know are made up of the cream of the crop of every member planet that is in the Galactic Authority. And they go through not only physical and mental tests to make sure they're smart enough and strong enough, but they also go through ethical trials. So these are the best that they have out there. And they're more of a military police than anything else. So we're not to think of them as messiahs, because what they are doing is enforcing Galactic Authority law. And they're bringing us back with the intention of giving us a choice between a level 0 galactic civilization or being Stone Age again.
I hope we make the right choice.
I do too.
So you're talking about the ascension right there.
That's why I keep talking about it, is because this choice is coming up. And what I'm seeing in politics is people are going to be selfish, because the first thing they have to give up is pecking order slavery. The whole hierarchy system has to be given up. So you have to give up your position on the social ladder. You have to give up money. You have to be willing to feed that bum on the corner that you think is worthless.
Yeah, that's the humble yourself. Just humble yourself from the attachment.
So yeah, that's the underlying thing, is you have to actually honor each other. And that's my understanding, is we've been offered this 5 times before, and we've always turned it down.
And we've always been knocked back.
And we've always been knocked back.
And they say they don't care as long as they're on the top, as they get knocked back.
So they're at the point of, we are so dangerous when we get out that they don't think they have a choice. They are defending everyone else from us.
They're probably right. I mean, look what we do to each other.
Yeah. We can't even be nice to each other on this planet.
Ask a question?
Yeah.
The 20 and back. Because this seemed to be a pattern here. That is, why is only 20 years? Is this some consent? This is some laws of karma thing? What is it?
Or does it have to do with you said earlier that clones only last 20 years?
Clones only last 20 years.
That's the reason?
That's the reason.
Most of these 20 backs clone, you think?
The 20 and backs are clones because they suppress the natural mind of the clone. And so they have an adult body with an infant mind, and then they put your mind in on top of that. And by the time the clone hits 20 years, it's strong enough, it's pushing you out.
Interesting.
And so what they do to send you back is they kill the clone. and you end up back in your natural body at the time you left it.
Wow.
But if they haven't put you through some sort of mind control, you remember everything.
Now, why do you think they go through the process of the whole age regression thing if they are clones? Or is that some sort of cover? Or
The age regression is when they use your actual body.
So some people that say they've been in twinning backs have then been age regressed. Are they
confused?
Because like Tony Rodriguez says he was age regressed.
Tony has been over time growing his understanding of what happened to him, because he was not supposed to be in our programs.
Yes. He was.
And so
really, that's
he
was so interesting.
He has come to the conclusion that he was put into a clone body.
Interesting.
This is what Donna Marshall talks about. You familiar with Donna Marshall?
I'm
he was
familiar.
Put in a clone body, and the body was killed. How did he regain his memory?
Because your memories are not in your brain.
Okay. They're in your auric field, right? Oh, somewhere else.
Your memories are in your auric field. They still have to
do like memory wiping, no matter what.
Yeah, they still have to do the memory wiping because of the memory being in your auric field.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Interesting.
You got any more questions?
No, I can't think of it, man. Because a lot of stuff Penny don't know, because she ain't looking at other people's testimony because she don't want to contaminate hers. But there's a lot of stuff that she don't know. I don't want to throw it all on. Like I told her about the Orions and all that. But you don't know about the Orion. Well, we wrapping up for now. I mean, we can do more interviews in the future, of course, because your story is so deep. I mean, you got 2,200 authors. You have a hell of you probably got galactic expansion of memories that you ain't got access to yet. That you know. I mean, these are soul fractures. This is amazing.
I have reintegrated 30 altars, and I have a little more than 50% on 3 of them. So the others, I have bits and pieces. And the ones I haven't reintegrated, I don't have a lot on.
Yeah, that's what I say. There's a lot of stuff that you don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I don't know, can't access.
Yeah. So that's why I said I don't want to overwhelm her. We can do this in previews when she.
Quick question: Are you hopeful for our outcome? Do you think we'll make the right choice?
I hope we'll make the right choice, but the more I look at the news, the less realistic it appears.
And do you think there is a time limit, or do you know the time frame to where time is up? I've heard like 2026 or thereabouts.
Well, I know that there's a group of ETs that are going for official first contact next year.
Is that the tall whites?
The tall whites are not part of it. The Ponti, which is a group of Zetas, and they're organizing it. But they have, like I believe it's like 30 different star nations that they've got involved. So that would, and they're not planning to go through government. They're planning to talk directly to people, humans.
Interesting.
Oh, I heard about that from other testimony too. So that's
well,
that you said.
I follow their Twitter. Can you imagine ETs on Twitter?
Yeah,
and that's true too. They probably
they do.
What is their Twitter account?
They have a Twitter account. So yeah.
What is that, by the way?
Do they let you know? Tell us what the Twitter account is for the audience.
I can send you the link, and you can put it where you share this.
Okay.
Awesome.
That's excellent.
Well.
Yeah.
Are we done?
Well, Yeah,
Yes.
well, Penny, we want to thank you so much for being on our inaugural episode.
Yeah, we still working on the title. We
Still working on the title. I think it's going to be called Understand This, but we will see.
Yes.
Okay.
But
Well,
once again, thank you.
Good luck,
You are
guys.
a treasure trove of information, and we couldn't have thought of anyone better to kick us off.
Right. Exactly.
So we really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Very informative.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.